I recently visited an island in Mexico that many people think is haunted. But after going there myself, I'm not so sure about that. Let me explain. The island I went to is called the Queen of the South, or Isla de las Muñecas in Spanish. It is located just off the coast of the popular beach town of Cancun, and it is only a 10-minute boat ride away. The island is covered in hundreds of creepy dolls hanging from trees and bushes. When I first arrived at the island, I was immediately stunned by the number of dolls. They were everywhere. Some were old and torn, while others seemed almost new. There were even some that were moving slightly in the wind, which made me jump back in surprise. The dolls were all different shapes and sizes, but they all had one thing in common. They were all staring directly at you with their eyes, whether you wanted them to or not. I felt like I was being watched the entire time I was on the island. I started to notice that the dolls seemed to be in certain patterns, like they were trying to send me a message. For example, sometimes there would be two dolls hanging side by side, and when you looked between them, there was a third doll hidden in the branches above you. It was like they were playing a game of hide and seek. As I continued walking around the island, I noticed other strange things. For example, there were dolls hanging from the trees in perfect little rows. It was like someone had lined them up before hanging them. Other dolls were hanging upside down, which made no sense to me. Why would anyone hang a doll upside down? There were also dolls in the bushes and behind rocks. They seemed to be hiding everywhere. I could have kept walking around the island forever and probably never found them all. But why are there so many dolls on this island? That's the question I've been asked the most since I posted my video. And there are a few different theories about how they got there. The first theory is that the dolls were left behind by Hurricane Katrina. This is the most likely explanation because Hurricane Katrina hit the Yucatan Peninsula hard in 2005. She could have easily blown the dolls off the shelves of some nearby homes and businesses and then carried them over to the island. The second theory is that the dolls were brought to the island on purpose. This is less likely, but some believe that the dolls were left behind by voodoo practitioners who used them in their rituals. Others believe that the dolls were put on the island as a warning to boaters who were trying to sneak into Mexico. Whatever the reason, I can't imagine that it would have been easy to bring all of those dolls to the island. Some of them must weigh over 10 pounds, and there are hundreds of them. I couldn't help but wonder if the person who brought them there was still on the island, and if he was watching me. I started to feel very uncomfortable. I'm not sure why, but I felt like I was being watched the entire time I was on the island. There were so many dolls staring at me with their blank eyes that I started to see things that weren't really there. For example, I thought I saw a doll move out of the corner of my eye, but when I turned to look, there was nothing there. I decided to leave the island as quickly as I could. I ran to the boat as fast as I could and didn't look back. Once I was on the boat, I started to calm down a bit. I realized that what I was feeling was probably just anxiety. But as we were pulling away from the island, I saw something that made me freeze. One of the dolls was floating in the water, right in the middle of the path we had taken to get there. It wasn't there when we arrived, so I knew that it had fallen off the island while we were there. I don't know what it was about this particular doll, but it scared me more than all of the others. Maybe it was because it was in the water and I knew that it was heavy, or maybe it was just the way it was floating. Whatever the reason, it freaked me out. I told the captain to turn the boat around and go back to the island. I needed to get that doll out of the water. As we got closer to the doll, I could see that it was tangled in some seaweed. I grabbed a life buoy and jumped into the water. The water was freezing cold, but I didn't care. I managed to untangle the doll from the seaweed and pull it onto the boat. It was then that I noticed that the doll was missing an eye. One of the locals said that this doll belonged to one of the island's former caretakers. He disappeared several years ago, and no one knows what happened to him. Some say that he drowned trying to swim from the island to the mainland. This story, along with the state of the doll, made me shiver. I didn't want to touch it, but I knew I had to do something with it. So I tied it to the back of the boat and we headed back to the mainland. We dropped the doll off at the local police station and then I went home. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept tossing and turning in bed, but it wasn't because I was uncomfortable. I kept thinking about the doll and what might happen next. The next morning, I woke up feeling refreshed. I knew that whatever had happened, it was out of my hands now. I had done what I could, and that was enough. Since posting my video, I've received a lot of feedback. Most people thought it was interesting, and some even wanted to visit the island themselves. But there were a few negative comments. One person said that I had made the whole thing up for attention. Another said that I was a bad person for stealing the doll. Neither of these comments bothered me because I knew that I hadn't done anything wrong. I had found the doll floating in the water and simply pulled it out. It was already damaged and missing an eye. The most disturbing comment came from someone who claimed to be one of the island's former caretakers. He said that he hadn't disappeared and that he was watching my every move the entire time I was on the island. He also said that he had put the doll in the water himself and that it was a warning to those who trespassed on his island. Now, I don't know if this person is actually one of the island's former caretakers or if he is just trying to be creepy. But either way, I am glad that I didn't listen to him and that I took the doll off the island. Who knows what he might have done if I hadn't? And that, my friends, is the creepiest island that I have ever visited. I don't know what it is about the dolls that makes them so creepy, but there's just something about them that gets under your skin. If you ever go to Cancun, I highly recommend taking a boat trip to the island. It's only 10 minutes away and well worth the trip. Just be sure to bring a camera so you can capture all of the creepy dolls. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.